Hi there, it's me, Brianna, and you are listening to Are We Caught Up Yet? Marvel Edition. You can find us on youtube.com/Save the Game Media and podcast services. If you do want to show Save the Game Media some extra love and get early access to all of our content, you can find us at patreon.com/Save the Game Media. Excuse me. Today, I'm joined by my co-host and friend, Sam. Before we get started, a couple things. One, your camera is still frozen for me and has been since before the intro started. I was hoping that it would reset.
No, afraid not.
Two, how are you? And three, what have you been watching?
There's too many numbers there. I'm confused. I'm all right. I'm pretty tired. Various things going on. Nothing too bad. Just lots of things preoccupying me. So I'm sort of running on fumes, which is not good. I mentioned this on No Limits with Taylor. You were absent. We had a much better time.
You usually do.
I was saying, I realistically kind of need to feel well rested right now because February is going to be demonic. But alas, here we are. Yeah, I'm sort of out of practice. It's been a long time since we've done one of these.
It's not been that long.
Yeah, it has.
So what have you been watching?
That's what I'm trying to conjure.
Have you seen Squid Games?
Yes.
How was it?
I thought it was pretty good. I think overall I probably prefer it over the first series, but I think that the first series is more of a complete product.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, the cliffhanger makes sense where they end it, but it's also just sort of like, all right, so you could have just called this season 3 part 1, because season 3 is very clearly going to be season 2 part 2. Yeah, it was all right though. I felt they had another good ensemble of characters. So yeah, watch that. Let's think. I finished the second season of Silo, which is still excellent. I've obviously watched the first episode of Severance season 2, which is, I haven't missed a beat. Perfect. No notes. One of the best shows around currently.
Did you listen to the podcast on that one?
To the podcast on that one?
On Severance?
No, God, no. Although I'm sure there's interesting tidbits to extract from whoever's talking on that cast and crew and whatnot, I imagine. I don't think I've watched anything else, to be honest. If I have, I can't remember, and I won't remember. So I don't want to leave dead air hanging. So
no, it's fine. Let's just sit in silence until you remember.
That's what I've done. I will pass it over to you.
Okay. I am very tired. I got a new tattoo 2 days ago now. And I have a second skin on it. And I get really paranoid with second skins. Sam, I'm not sure how familiar you are with the healing process of a tattoo, but
Yes.
second skin is like a saran wrap, but it's like very like it's stuck to your skin. But underneath where like the actual tattoo is, like obviously your body is still trying to heal. So there's like some plasma and ink and stuff that comes out, which is not pretty. And also not a great time. And so
Mm.
I get really scared that it's going to like in like while I'm sleeping, it's just going to like unseal. Um and I don't want like black ink all over my bed. Um, so I get really paranoid, and so I was like barely sleeping last night because I kept worrying that I had like ripped it or whatever. Um, so
Mm.
very paranoid,
Yeah. Yeah.
and now I'm very tired. So you know, bodes well
Understandable,
for today.
as always.
uh, so yeah. And then what am I watching? I watched Squid Game season 2. Obviously, I watched Severance. Season 2, episode 1. I watched a movie that is older that I actually thought was really good. Like I thought the dialogue writing was really good, which is the whole reason why it got recommended to me was because of the dialogue. But it's called Before Sunrise. Um,
Hmm.
it's an older film, but it was pretty good. It is from 1995.
Yep.
I'm watching the second one sometime today,
I was
which
going to
is
say, yeah.
Before Sunset.
Yeah.
Looking forward to that. I don't know. It's shockingly like good for like how little to nothing there is that really goes on during the movie.
Hmm.
Really enjoyed it.
I assume you'll watch the third one after you watch the second.
No, I don't finish things. That's my plan. So just kidding. Sam. I don't know what I'll do. I'll probably watch it. Um, so yeah, I don't know if I've really watched anything else besides anime. Don't think so. So yeah, that about
Mm.
catches you up to where I am with TV shows.
Yeah.
I have kind of decided I don't think I want to watch Silo, which was
Why?
not
Why?
because I just like seeing like because I don't know a lot about the show. But like from the premise of the show, I don't really care. I'm just like, okay. So, and then like I've seen some scenes from season 2 that I was just like didn't care. Just because my dad and his girlfriend were like watching while I was like making food or something in the kitchen, and I just was like,
Mm.
don't care. So I don't know.
Boo.
Um, I do think
Boo.
I do think about watching Shogun though, someday maybe.
I mean, if you aren't watching Shogun, then what are we even doing here?
Well, I'm not watching Shogun because I've been so busy watching Secret Invasion.
That is not even slightly a reasonable excuse.
You're right. After watching that show, I wish I had done almost anything else. So yeah, great segue, huh? Uh, to general thoughts on Secret Invasion. Those are my general thoughts. I said, holy cow, that was a whole lot of nothing. And kind of wish I could do something else with that time that I spent watching it. This is one of those times that I wish that there was like a 2 times speed on Disney.
I thought you were just going to say that one of the times where I wish I didn't agree to do this.
No.
Yeah.
Shockingly haven't thought that yet. But, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just leaving the door open for whenever.
Yeah.
What are your general thoughts?
Put it at the bottom. It's trash. It's trash.
And
it breaks my heart to say it, but it is. For context, Secret Invasion is one of the biggest crossover culmination events in Avengers history in the comics. And, there was speculation when the Skrulls were introduced that, they were going to be this massive major player, and there was going to be all this subterfuge throughout dozens of films and TV shows, and it would all lead to a big Secret Invasion film. And then they announced Secret Invasion, and they announced it to be a Disney Plus show. And we were like, that's an interesting choice, but maybe it'll work. But that's going to be a very expensive TV show because you're going to be having a whole lot of VFX, and you're going to have a whole lot of your big famous actors in it. And then they announced the cast. And we were like, oh, so it's got none of the big guys in it. Okay. And then we watched it. And just a colossal misfire on pretty much every level, which is a damn shame, because this was very much in the era, which many would argue we're still in, of Marvel is so dead. Oh wait, Marvel is so back. Whiplash, where one project would be abysmal and then the next would be excellent, and so on and so forth, repeated ad nauseum. And I don't know that I've seen the fan base as dejected as they were when this show not only was done, but also just whilst it was airing. You saw progressively, week to week, with each episode as it released, people just progressively losing hope that they would find some way to, have the last couple of episodes be bangers. And it's like, no, they didn't. Which is a real shame.
Yeah. I think one of the things that really bummed me out the most about this show is like them just like kind of blowing a proverbial load with like the cast on this one, because like Kobe Smolder's gone.
Yeah.
Emilia Clarke can be used again.
Sure.
But she's a really good actress, and I feel like that was such a weird character for her. Olivia Colman, really cool character for her, but I have doubts as to whether she'll ever come back again.
I don't see it. I'd love her to, but
and I feel like she did such a good job in that role, too. So
yeah.
And of course, one of one of the Kens. Kingsley Benadire.
That's just disgusting.
He is a Barbie. Or he's Ken. He's from Barbie.
I know.
He's basketball Ken. So yeah, I just feel like that was really silly. I will tell you that I genuinely and truly thought that they were going to leave Agent Ross dead. And I was like, if they do that, like I'm like actually gonna be mad. Like not only would it be a waste of time, but I would be like really pissed off.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's just like I don't understand because the premise, there's so many. I think this show suffered as a result of
I
like
suffered.
maybe too many cooks in the kitchen, maybe because again, adding external context, which doesn't matter too much in terms of the criticisms of the show as it exists, but is information that might be pertinent, is that we know officially through reporting that this show was at least initially and leading up to maybe even partly into production, the central storyline was about like a like a virus that the scrolls were going to disperse or employ in some way.
Okay.
And obviously this show was doing production around the time that COVID hit. So they're like, nope, we can't do that. And, you know, then they were like, well, we've got like a kind of almost inciting global conflict and terrorism angle to this. And then global things started happening. Primarily at this point with between Russia and Ukraine, obviously. Where they're like, nope, we can't do that either. So I feel like they had to hard pivot and they tried to make something out of what was left and then stitch random stuff in that they thought might make some kind of sense. Which I think shows.
Yeah, it really does.
You can tell that this was a severe victim of the cutting room floor being sort of edited to death. Which is like, again, it's a shame because if you spin this as a proper sort of on the ground spy thriller thing centering around Nick Fury dealing with a scroll threat, that sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Or you lean more into the traditional side of the scrolls becoming a global threat and actively doing horrific things, inciting kind of global conflict, and actually like fully going for it. That also sounds interesting. But the show just sort of begins and then it ends and it accomplishes nothing. It doesn't really move the story forward in any meaningful way. Like you say, it kills off two, I think, like not top tier by any means, but like strong characters. You kill off Colby Smulders and you kill off Ben Mendelsohn. It's like, what are you doing? And then you have like, which is the main criticism levied against this genre is it's just like CGI dude punching other CGI dudes, explosion. And seeing Emilia Clarke like furl up Drax's bicep is one of the most cursed things I've ever seen. And it didn't get any better. It just, that whole fight at the end just kept getting worse again, conceptually, kind of a cool thing. Somebody that can just sort of metamorphose and use lots of different people's powers. That's cool.
Yep.
But you didn't do it right.
They also didn't really, in my opinion, I feel like they didn't set many um outlines for her powers, so we also don't really understand the scope of her powers, or limits or anything like that. So it feels like it's going to be hard for them to use that character.
Yeah, she's just very OP. Because they're like,
Yeah.
oh well, it's all of the heroes and villains and whatever that were there at the during the end game fight, and I'm like, okay, but that does include people like Captain Marvel, who in and of herself is ridiculously overpowered alone, and you're
Mhm.
including dozens of other people in that. So, like, oh, I don't know. It seems dumb. Um, I like the ideas, and also I think like it just kind of tarnishes a lot of the surviving characters,
Mhm.
like Nick Fury. Cool dude. I like the idea of getting a show about him because of how mysterious he is. Like I love delving into him psychologically and personally and all of this stuff. But like we don't even really do that. Like we get that he's got a wife and his wife is a Skrull and he knows that
Yeah,
and
and
he's
he's
cool
into
with it.
her. Hey,
And he's
listen.
he's
I've
he's
also read alien romance
yeah,
novels.
we can stop that. And he's trying to prevent the scrolls from again like inciting this global conflict. And he comes back down to earth at the beginning of the show, does his thing, kind of works, he stops Gravik, cool, but then he's like, right, my job's done, buggers off back up into space just as the scrolls start like inciting the global conflict.
Mhm.
Like, all right, bye, Nick, I guess. Seems like the worst time for you to leave, but okay, cool. Um, and also another thing, the one big character that you have is Rhodey, and you do, the usual twist that Secret Invasion does, where you little by little reveal occasionally that a hero you thought has been a hero the whole time has been a scroll. But when did they change from the real person to a scroll? What happened? So you had a reveal with Rhodey. Cool. But inadvertently, you've ruined Rhodey in several different previous appearances because he is in the thing being like, kept unconscious or whatever. And he's in his hospital gown and he doesn't have the cybernetics on his legs. Now, he got the cybernetics on his legs at the end of Civil War. So that means, if we're to believe the show, that means Rhodey hasn't been Rhodey since before the end of Civil War. So he probably, after he got shot out of the sky and crash landed and broke his back or whatever, he went into the hospital, and then a scroll came and swapped out with him, whatever.
That doesn't even make sense.
But you know what that also does, Bree?
Hmm.
Who was Rhodey closest with?
Iron Man?
Yeah, so that means at Endgame, when they had that little heart-to-heart moment where they didn't say anything to each other just as Tony was dying, Rhodey didn't get
Oh.
that. That
Oh.
wasn't Rhodey.
Did they really confirm that that's when he switched, or is that just like the fan theory?
Well, I mean, he doesn't have the cybernetics, and he's in the hospital gown that he was in. He was in at the end of Civil War, so
Oh
there would
man.
be no reason for him to be in a hospital gown again unless that was the time that he was swapped out. So that means, like, I don't mind everything we've seen from Rhodey since that point hasn't been Rhodey, but that does mean like him in Infinity War, that wasn't Rhodey that got dusted. he didn't fight alongside everybody in Endgame. It's like, that's fine.
Are they even going to address that though?
That's the thing. And also,
They're not gonna, but
there is a version of this where it's not even him, obviously not him there when Tony dies. There could be a version going forwards of Rhodey's character where they actually reckon with that, where he wakes up and he's been shaken out of it and he's really him again, and he learns all of this stuff in the same way that Yelena learned about Natasha being dead, right? After being dusted, and she came back and she's like, where's Natasha? And Natasha died. Having that be a
yeah.
thing that like continually affects and influences the character going forwards. I just don't have faith for some reason that they're going to do that with Rhodey. I feel like they didn't even really consider that, and they were just like, let's do something interesting and have Rhodey be revealed to be a Skrull, and didn't consider the narrative consequences. Personally,
Yeah, but I think there's also like the opposite consequences of like the Skrull version of him may not have had the best interest of like maybe humanity in mind, but I think that like he clearly liked some of those characters and got along with them.
but that's where it gets murky, because yes, there are good Skrulls, but I don't know that the good Skrulls are the ones infiltrating and
Well,
like abducting people.
I don't even know if you could say like obviously like that he is like good, bad, whatever, but like I also think that like the person that he's listening to wasn't necessarily active back then. And so wouldn't have been making demands of him beyond just like, hey, you need to replace this person and like, do what you got to do. But like
Yeah,
I think that he definitely went like above and beyond like what was required of his like scroll duty, whatever. So I don't know. I think that I agree with you. I don't think it's going to be addressed on either side. Like either the scroll version of him or the regular version of him. I just don't think it's going to be touched.
I just think it leaves a sour taste in the mouth. There are ways of doing this that can be very interesting and compelling, but I feel like if that is something you're going to do, you kind of need to tackle it straight away,
Mm,
because leaving things as they are and things now not being addressed, and we don't know if or even when or even if they're going to be addressed,
mm-hmm.
it just sort of does by default tarnish a lot of Rhodey stuff in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Like, again, and I think that just presents maybe the idea that in a serialized franchise like this, whether it's specifically just talking about TV shows or movies, or the two combined together to build the overarching picture, that's not the same as issues of a comic book which come out in rapid succession of one another. Because of how expansive the MCU is, they have to keep like looking at little different corners and segments of it at a time. And there certainly, as of late, hasn't been one consistent through line as there was earlier on.
No. Yeah, I do think
So,
that like I almost wonder, like I'm sure they have people that are like they're like Bible people that are like this is not like you can't do this. This is like would break canon. This wouldn't break canon, stuff like that. Like I'm sure they have people that like keep track of stuff, but it seems like not just with this show, but with a lot of stuff they like probably ignore them. At least like
yeah,
what 20% of the time, 25% of the time.
yeah. I mean, I don't know. I feel there's a way. I think the best way that you can do this sort of thing of pulling the rug out from under people and not having them feel like wronged
Mm-hmm.
is and I'm not saying this like specifically for Tony, but I'll just use him as an example. Not
Mm-hmm.
that I would want this for Tony specifically, but the idea that like Tony sacrifices himself in Endgame, and this is something you would have to navigate very carefully, regardless of which character it was. But they die doing something heroic, sacrificing themselves or whatever, or not
Mm-hmm.
even doing anything heroic. They just die. You know, like a villain who's super powerful brutalizes them and just gets the better of them and kills them very unceremoniously. And it's the, you know, the emotional gut punch for the audience. It's like, Jesus Christ, I can't believe they just did that. And then in the same project or a couple of projects down the line, but relatively close vicinity and time wise, you then have the bait and switch that the person that got killed was actually a scroll. So the real hero is still alive, but they are now in a dire predicament where they need to be rescued by other people so that they can return and help. I think that's the way to do it, because that then doesn't necessarily, depending on how you tackle it, tarnish the previous stuff,
Yeah.
especially if you keep when they were replaced nebulous, because isn't that kind of the point anyway? The mystery is that people are suspicious of when they got swapped out.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's as fun or as interesting if you just serve that answer up to people.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a messy one.
Yeah. Messy and gross. You know,
Depending.
it's a messy meal that like also doesn't taste good, so it wasn't worth the mess.
Yeah, I think there is not a high chance, but there is like a non-zero chance that I think nothing of this show is ever addressed again, and it's almost treated as like non-canon. They won't go that far, but I could certainly see a world where like nothing about this show is ever touched on again.
Yep.
And that would
I would
include
agree
like
with that.
never seeing Olivia Colman or Emilia Clarke or anybody. Because you can keep Jackson around, obviously, but everybody else is dead. Um, and you can keep Rhodey, but that I think,
And Agent Ross.
sure. But like even with Rhodey, I think that there is a way where they just we know that it is Rhodey now, and they just move forward and don't ever address it. It's just sort of like, you know, pretend it didn't happen. They can still be like, yeah, Rhodey got switched out with a scroll, but I think like that is maybe the most they say or do. I don't know that the scrolls are going to play any kind of pivotal part going forwards.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. So let's say like you're handed ignoring most of like what comes after this. Um you're handed this right here where Marvel is. What do
Hmm.
you do with it then? Like at you as like Sam, if you had decisions, what would you have done to try and fix this situation? Like Secret Invasion came out. It's too
Yeah.
late, but now you got to fix it.
Um, well, I mean, I would do probably what they are doing right now, which
Ignoring it.
is, yeah. But then, like I said, the MCU is so segmented and we're getting stuff so infrequently in comparison at this point, and each consecutive thing is tackling a different subset of characters in a completely different environment with different things going on,
Mhm.
that we're at a stage even present day where we don't know if any of this is ever going to be touched on again, because none of these characters have reappeared in any show or film since. None of it's been mentioned. But then I can say the same about the Eternals. Like, none of that's been talked about. There was a giant fucking thing in the sky, and there's a giant fucking thing buried in the ocean,
Forgot about
and that
that. Yeah.
none of those have been talked about. So it's like, I don't know. I feel like if okay, what I'll say is if Marvel are going to ignore any of the projects that they've created, it is this one. The fan reception, the critical reception is the lowest I think that they've had. It feels completely superfluous and unnecessary as a product in terms of the narrative that it tells. Again, it doesn't inch the overall overarching story in any meaningful way. Or should I say, not in any way that they're going to be willing to follow through on. Like the ending of the show, and innocent human people being gunned down because the Skrull threat is going on, and the president or whatever is talking about, yes, we're going to hunt out the Skrulls. It's like, well, that's not the lesson you should have taken away from this, my dude. But okay, and that again enhances the stupidity and like, why is Nick Fury leaving now? Like, what? Why are you going? The president is saying he's going to kill all the Skrulls, and the whole point of the show is that there are still good Skrulls that are trying to help.
Yes.
And that's there is like interesting sort of racial, geopolitical, real life stuff that you can tackle there, but they aren't gonna do that. They sort of scratched the surface with some of those things in this show, but they really just went. They observed that those comparisons are there, and then went, "Yep, okay." They didn't delve into any of them, and again, some of that is a victim of the meddling and fine tuning and editing and all of that. But still, it doesn't change the fact that the end result is a messy and completely it's a tarnishing product that kind of leaves a stain on the MCU in a completely unnecessary sort of own goal. It's like you had so many different avenues set up where you just had a home run with a show like this conceptually on paper, and you took none of them. You had a foul ball, and not only did you have a foul ball, you took the ball in your mouth and you turned around and you spat it in your coach's face. It's like, what? How did you screw the pooch this badly? I don't understand. Like, and the positive takeaway from this, Bree, is that I truly think that it was this show that was the breaking point, the straw on the camel's back, so to speak, that really made Marvel pump the brakes, and do as much as they possibly could to QA their stuff and sort of return to the idea of quality over quantity. This show was kind of the end of what was the first real big wave. And I know it feels like more than one wave, but really, in terms of the things that they were announcing years in advance, Secret Invasion was really one of the last ones of the first like Disney Plus push. They were like, we're just going to greenlight all of these shows so that Disney Plus has so much content, guys. Get excited. Secret Invasion is like 3.5 years away from right now when we're announcing it, but you can be excited about it, right? Subscribe. And I think, they've had diminishing returns on almost all of the shows consecutively, even if I think that the quality on some later ones have still been pretty damn high. So if there's any takeaway, it's like, thank God that this show happened in a way, because I think that if this show didn't tank as hard as it did, I don't know how lively, if at all, Marvel and the MCU would be right now. So might have been a necessary evil that kind of saved the franchise. So that's still TBD, I guess, and very subjective. But
I was gonna say, unfortunately, I don't think we even know if it's if it's gonna correct itself fully. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, man, okay. Well, I think I really do think it's interesting. Like, if I'm thinking about like Marvel stuff that
Mm.
we've watched thus far, and things that's like it's not just bad, but like I wish that it didn't come out or that like I never had to see it. I think Secret Invasion is definitely one. I think Quantum Mania is definitely one.
Yeah.
And we both just watched those recently. um, I think probably Thor in the Dark World as well.
Yeah.
Mm, yeah, and I would actually say both Ant-Man and the Wasp, both of them.
Mm.
I don't know. I was just thinking about that. Like, I wonder, like, how things would be differently, like, how much things would be different if some of these films didn't come out.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to know, really.
Hmm. What
I
would be
was,
yours? That's like, I wish these didn't get made.
I mean, this for sure.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's. I guess the question is slightly different. Like, I would probably frame it that the one thing I wish wasn't made was this. I think and stick with me. I think everything else that has been made, I think could have and in the time should have been made. But my caveat on those, on the some of those in that other category would be not made that way.
Mm.
Like, I think all the TV shows that they've done make sense as TV shows. And yeah, there's some nitpicks and things that I would have changed, but ultimately they sort of make sense and they fit in roughly, where they ought to be. And I would say the same for the films. Like Thor Love and Thunder, I think not that great. Um, but I still think another Thor film made sense. I think
Mhm.
that bringing Jane back made sense. I think that having someone like Gore, who is one of the main Thor villains, makes sense. Obviously, lots, as we talked about, lots we would change about that film. But like, I think that that's fair. I think I can't say the same about Secret Invasion. Um, and that's coming from the perspective of like a mega fan. So I'm probably defending some other projects that probably don't deserve to be defended in any way.
I mean, I
But
do understand your point of like it's like these it made sense for these to be made at that time.
yeah.
I don't know. The thing is like I definitely agree with you that like Secret Invasion really could have been cool.
Hmm.
Um, I think that it could have had like a pretty big impact on like the story, like you're saying, like with the roadie stuff. Like they could have done that with more characters. Um, I don't know. I think that they really could have done a lot more with it. And I also think that it feels like sometimes that they not everybody, but it feels like sometimes the executive people, or people that at least that are making some of these bigger decisions don't care, about like I guess like the canonical events and don't care about like kind of making a story that makes sense. Because I do think if there was like a team of people, and I would say even when there was like the brothers involved, like I still think they could have used a team of people that's like we're kind of keeping track of everything.
Mm.
And you cannot what if they say no, you cannot do it kind of thing. Like there should have been like some team that had like some sort of like executive power that's like if you want fans to be satisfied, like you cannot do this kind of thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, I think that's fair. Um, I just think like this show shouldn't exist.
Mm,
Like There is a version of the show where it is more just Winter Soldier, Nick Fury, spy espionage stuff. Cool. There is a version of the show that is Skrull centric. Okay, I could also see that. But you are relegating, again, like I said, you're relegating such a pivotal story in the comics to a TV show, which isn't like a death sentence by any means, but you are implicating and introducing concepts and conflicts and questions that are so, or I say, could be like earth-shatteringly huge in terms of its implications in a show that is just horrifically messy. And you've shot yourself in the foot on both fronts, because now people have just like an indifference, if not an outright sort of disgust towards the Scrolls in terms of like a consumer audience side of things, of like we don't want anything with the Scrolls anymore, Jesus Christ. But also, like, again, like I said, tarnishing some of the characters in the show that otherwise were sort of beloved, whether they died in the show or are still surviving. So it's like, I just feel if you were going to do a Secret Invasion thing, you should have had it been a feature film, I think, in the same way that it was in the comics. And I think that if you were to do that, you could have had a show that acted as a precursor to it. Don't know what you would have called it, but you introduce those things and then you have a big culmination feature film for it. The fact that there isn't an accompanying big grand on-screen blockbuster type thing where all of these things unravel and take place, it's like I edged to the extreme of like, well, you're introducing really interesting, potentially interesting narrative elements, and you screwed it up. So, and there's no hope, because if there was going to be something like that, a follow-up to this, it would have been announced in tandem.
Yep.
Right. And it would have been out by now as well.
Yep, absolutely.
So it's like, it's just not going to happen. And probably for the best at this point. So
yeah. Bummer. All right, well, we have a couple points here that like I just wanted to like not like touch on, but like just go over, make sure we touched everything. Soundtrack, nothing to say. Anything?
Yeah, no.
Okay. Bechdel test, it did not pass, which is crazy.
Another indictment.
Is there any specific characters that you wanted to talk about?
That we haven't already? Probably not.
Okay.
Like, I think everything we've, off the top of my head. Like, you could talk about the wife, but it's like, she's Nick Fury's wife and she's a Skrull.
Yep.
That's about it.
Yep. I will say I for Emilia Clarke's character, I kind of hope that they don't bring her back. Not because of Emilia Clarke, obviously, but because like the idea of that character, especially since they didn't set up any limitations for her, like just feels like it feels like a kid on the playground that's like, yeah, I'm invincible and I can also kill you whenever I want.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think if they had done it a little bit differently, where it's like she got this really cool power, but like it has some pretty strict limitations. Here's kind of the limitations that we're exploring. And you know, she could be like and like kind of even like present the idea, like not directly, but like tangentially of like this is how she'll be like helping in the future. But like they didn't. She just beat somebody up and they're like, look how cool she is. Even though it didn't look cool, it actually looked kind of horrific.
Yeah. Yeah, like we already arguably have far too many overpowered characters, and introducing another one is weird. I and stick with me. I think not that again I have any issue with it, but it does just unfortunately fuel some of the more toxic sides of the community and the internet in general, where a lot of the most like ridiculously overpowered characters are women. Again, not that I have an issue with that,
Mm-hmm.
but it is unfortunate that, you know, characters like Nick Fury and Talos, even though they are central characters here, are by default just become inferior, and there isn't really a male counterpart. Again, not that there has to be a male counterpart. We've talked about this sort of thing before, but I don't think that Marvel are doing themselves any favors
Mm-mm.
in an era where they really need to, with these projects, appeal to all four quadrants. They're getting better with the female representation. We love that, but I think that there is something being lost in there's like a transaction going on, and I feel like for portions of the community, people are becoming disillusioned with these shows and films and being less interested in watching them because they feel like, you know, people like T'Challa is gone for obvious reasons, but it's like he's gone, and like Star-Lord is retiring, and Iron Man's dead, and Captain America's gone. I mean, he's back with Sam, obviously, but like Steve is gone. It's like, well, that's fine. And Hulk is like, he's not really the Hulk anymore. He's just sort of like a funny, quirky science Hulk. It's like there are plenty of great male characters, and people choose to ignore them, which is annoying. But it's unfortunate specifically for the characters, because I think that on paper Gaia is an extremely interesting and compelling character, and like you said, Emilia Clarke is a great actress, but I just feel it's unfortunate for them that the way in which they are introduced is not doing them any service.
Yeah, I think that like also as you're kind of like talking about this and kind of unfolding it, I think that it also kind of brings to mind, for me at least, the idea that they're no longer introducing female characters that are overpowered, like AKA women can't be superheroes unless they are overpowered because women are already just naturally so weak.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah,
do recognize, obviously, there's Yelena, there's Natasha, but Natasha's gone.
yeah,
We haven't seen Yelena in quite some time. And every time they're introducing, I would say besides like Miss Marvel, like besides her, every time they're introducing another female character, they're like, she's disgustingly overpowered.
yeah. Which, in all fairness, the characters that they're introducing and doing it with are as overpowered as they are in the comics as well. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so it's not just they're not just doing it for the MCU and pushing some agenda. That's the BS part of that argument. But it's unfortunate that they are doing the whole catching up on the representation, which is great, but they're doing it in rapid succession, one after the other, whether the project is centered around the characters or not. And because of how overpowered the characters are, rightly or wrongly, they overshadow other characters of their own gender or the opposite gender. And then that feeds into toxic conversations and
Yeah.
conspiracies.
But I mean, I
So,
think that it also like kind of presents the question because, like, just because it comes from the comic doesn't mean it isn't necessarily flawed.
no, exactly.
So,
Precisely.
so is it just, and I'm like, I'm asking this honestly, but like, is it just that there's really no female characters that are just like superheroes in the comics, or are they only picking the overpowered ones?
Yeah, no, there's plenty of um it's going to sound bad when I say it, but weaker female superheroes. Um, there's plenty of them. Um, Granted, are a number of them as interesting, or could they be as compelling visually? You know, arguably not. But I think that there is still scope to introduce them in appropriate ways. And I will say, without spoiling anything, like they have done a better job of that since this point.
That's good.
There
Yeah, I was
are
looking.
female characters.
They also had Gamora, and yeah, she was like really strong, but I feel like she had like pretty good limitations on her character.
Yeah, yeah. So, like,
Freaking
again,
bummer.
there are plenty of characters existing in the MCU and yet to be introduced for you where you are that do fit that mold better of being the more grounded, not as ridiculously powered characters on all ends of the spectrum, good and bad. So, I think they are again making strides to course correct in a number of ways and tone down certain things and find that happy medium, which I think is, rightly or wrongly, the best way forwards for the success of the franchise and for people to continue buying into the worlds and the characters that they're introducing. So, yeah, again, I feel like it's an unfortunate but necessary evil, this show, that sort of shook them awake a little bit, maybe, in a
Yeah,
variety of areas.
crazy that
Yeah.
this show exists. All right, last pieces here are any themes, stories, or anything for the through line that you feel like needs to be touched on.
No.
Okay. Ranking list. I'm assuming that this is going to the very bottom for you.
The very bottom.
Okay, yeah, it'll also be doing the same for me. That was crazy. What are we watching next, Sam?
So here's the thing, Brie.
Okay.
Technically, if we're sticking to the main core MCU, up next would be the Marvels,
Oh God. Okay, yep.
which, in Secret Invasion's fairness, is a nice follow up because Nick Fury is in the Marvels.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And Skrulls are very Captain Marvel centric, so okay. But spoiler alert, the Marvels has absolutely nothing to do with what's happening in Secret Invasion. But
Even though she's supposed to be looking for
yeah,
somewhere for the Skrulls.
for a home for the Skrulls, and
Oh.
Nick Fury showing up, you feel that he would mention what's just happened with the Skrulls on Earth, but of course he does not. That being said, though,
well, they have one of my favorite actors in the show.
I think we're going to go on a minor detour because we are realistically nearing the finish line. There's several more weeks to go, several more episodes of this to go before we're caught up. But we are nearing the finish line, and I feel like if we're going to do a detour,
now's the time.
Few detours left. It's now.
Okay, I'm happy to do a detour because the idea of watching the Marvels makes me want to peel my skin off.
So, next up, I've decided, and I feel like it's going to sound like a lot, but stick with me. I think we are going to do the original 3 X-Men films.
Okay.
So that is X-Men 1, X2, and X-Men 3, The Last Stand. Not all together, obviously, because that would be a bit crazy. But we do X-Men 1.
Then 2, then 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we... I think after that, we then get back on track. There is one final detour, but that...
I was going to say, we do need to take a detour for Deadpool.
That will come later, don't worry.
Okay.
So, yeah, we're getting there. I know we're in the rocky rough patch, but I promise you, for the most part, on the opposite side of this, the field is much greener.
We have 10 things Probably 10 to 15 things left, right?
I would say so. Yeah, that probably feels right. Like a dozen, just over a dozen, maybe.
Yeah, because you got the 3 X-Men. There's 3 Deadpool,
I mean, yes,
including the
but
newest one.
yeah, one of them is canonical. So that's, I mean, technically all three are canonical now, but like one is actually in the MCU.
Or right.
So that's
So,
six.
but we would still be watching the others,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Okay, so that's 6
yeah,
plus Agatha
yeah,
all along,
yeah,
plus the Marvels.
yeah.
That's 8. Plus 2 seasons of What If.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That's 10.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're watching. I know there's a show called I Am Groot. I have no idea if
No,
it's
no, 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 no. God, no.
okay. Okay.
Uh,
What else? I feel
uh,
like there's we have another season of Loki.
yes,
That's 11.
and um, Echo.
Okay. 12.
I think that's it.
Is that everything? Marvel Watch Order. Using Google really quick.
I think that's everything, unless I'm misremembering anything that came out last year.
Well, it looks like it's it. So we have 12 things left exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Huh.
Look at that. Who would have thought? Not me.
That's crazy. Hopefully What If is good. That's my thoughts on that.
Well, I mean, at the very least, they're comparatively bite-sized. So
Yeah, that's true.
you can whittle through those.
It kind of just makes me want to watch like Love, Death and Robots, you know?
I mean, please do.
I mean, I have, but I
I
just
know,
mean
but
like
like, watch it again.
I mean like they tried to
I
do
have.
it, but it's just not as good, you know?
Mm, mm.
When's the next season for that coming out? Hmm.
I mean, it's been greenlit. It was
Yeah,
greenlit back in 2020.
I think it's 2023.
Yeah. But I was actually watching a couple of episodes of it a few days ago.
You
Just
would.
by just
Did you
out of
watch that dancer one again?
put respect on Jabara's name. I didn't actually watch that one.
That's shocking.
Yeah, I was going to, but then I was like half asleep, and I was like, "Well, if I'm going to watch it, I want to give my full attention to it, so I'll leave that for another time." I haven't gone around to it yet, but I will, no doubt. Yeah, but I don't think there's been any movement, or if there is, we haven't
Maybe that
heard
can be
about
our
it.
next catch up. That would be kind of fun.
I mean that will be a relatively quick one, surely,
Mhm.
because you can't dedicate an entire episode to one thing.
You
right?
could.
Okay, but how are we talking for like an hour about yogurt?
That one's easy. Come on.
We unless you're thinking of getting into like deep philosophical conversations about yogurt,
I absolutely am, yeah.
right? Okay, I might
I
be
mean, that
busy
would be
that
the whole
day.
point of like watching that show is
I
to
might
get
be
into
busy.
deep random. Well, you haven't come up with any ideas for what's next, so
No, what? I'm a busy guy. I'll figure something out.
hmm, real sus. If we don't come up with something, well, I do actually like if we're being for real, I do actually have something that I think would be an incredible time. And I think that we would have a good time with it. However, as a alternate option, I do also think it would be fun to watch Avatar, but
I shall
especially
bite
with
my
the new
tongue.
shows and movies.
I shall bite my tongue.
I think I really do have something that would be fun. I think you'd have a good time, so
We'll see.
we'll see. Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for taking the time to hang out with us today. A special shout out to our current patrons. We have fabulous Brianna, Brianna's mom, Brianna's brother, Lindsay, Nikolai at Night, Cypher Primus, Brendan Myers, Marcus O'Neill, Lillian, David Hotright, Dave Harp, the Xbox Expansion Pass, Lee Navarro, Silicana, Ellery Woods, Parker III, Chad, and Rick Davis. Sam, where can people find you?
People can find me anywhere and everywhere at Sam Heaney, Heaney.
Awesome. You can find me at Fabulous Brianna, FABULISTBREANNA. You can find the network, the group, at Save the Game Media most places, except for Twitter/X, which is Save Game Media, because apparently it was too long. Come hang out on our Patreon. You can do that for $3. And yeah, good stuff. Okay. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks, question mark.